If you've been scrolling through endless benchmarks, watching YouTubers compare frame rates, and still feel stuck wondering whether any of those pre-built rigs actually fit your lifestyle, you're not alone. The truth is, the hype around specs can mask a lot of day-to-day friction. No one wants to spend a weekend wrestling with a cramped tower that's louder than a jet engine, or to discover the GPU you paid a premium for still chokes on the games you love. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and in the next few minutes I'm going to walk through why the MSI Aegis RS might finally give you that sweet spot between raw power and practical usability, or why it might be a miss for certain gamers. First off, the Aegis RS is built around the 13th Gen Intel Core i7-13700KF, paired with an RTX 4070 Ti. On paper those are monster numbers, but the real question is how that translates when you're actually sitting at a desk, streaming, or just hanging out with friends online. In my own testing environment using a 27-inch 1440p monitor, running titles like Cyberpunk 2077, Starfield, and Valorant, I saw consistent 100+ FPS in most AAA games, which means you can crank the settings to ultra and still stay well above the 60 frames per second ceiling that most monitors hit. That's the kind of headroom that lets you enable ray tracing without feeling the dip, a feature that matters if you love those realistic lighting effects and aren't willing to settle for a good enough visual experience. What really differentiates this machine from a generic build is the liquid cooling loop MSI baked in. Most pre-built gaming PCs rely on air cooling, and while that's fine for modest loads, the 13700KF can generate a lot of heat under sustained workloads like long gaming sessions or simultaneous streaming. The Aegis RS closed-loop cooler keeps CPU temperatures hovering in the low 70s during marathon sessions, which in turn reduces fan noise dramatically. I measured the ambient room noise and it stayed around 35 dB, which is roughly the hum of a quiet refrigerator, noticeable if you're trying to record voiceovers but not intrusive for a typical living room setup. That low acoustic footprint is a real win for anyone who shares a space with roommates or is sensitive to sound. Storage is a strong point as well. 2 TB of M.2 NVMe SSD translates to virtually no load times. World of Warcraft loads in under 10 seconds, and large open-world games like Horizon Forbidden West feel snappy from the moment you hit play. The fact that the drive is already installed and wired directly to the motherboard means there's no extra cable clutter inside the case, which also helps keep airflow optimal. For gamers who keep a library of titles and want quick access without juggling external drives, that convenience is worth the extra cost. Now, the bundle includes an MSI keyboard and mouse. They're not the high-end mechanical keyboards you might buy separately, but they're solid enough for everyday use. The keyboard has RGB lighting that syncs with the rest of the system, and the mouse feels comfortable for both FPS and MOBA titles. If you're a competitive player, you might eventually upgrade to a higher-end peripheral, but for most users the included gear eliminates the need to buy separate accessories right out of the box. That said, there are a few trade-offs you should be aware of before pressing buy. The Aegis RS comes in a fairly large tower, about 22 inches tall, so you'll need a decent amount of floor space. It's not a slim boutique case that you can tuck behind a TV, you'll need a dedicated spot where the whole rig can breathe. If you live in a cramped apartment or plan to move your PC around often, the size might become a logistical annoyance. Also, while the 80+ Gold PSU is a nice touch for efficiency, the system's total power draw at full load can approach the 750 watt range, which means you'll see higher electricity usage compared to a mid-range build with a less hungry GPU. For most gamers this isn't a deal-breaker, but for those watching their utility bills closely, it's something to factor in. Another point to consider is future-proofing. The RTX 4070 Ti is currently a sweet spot for 1440p and can handle 4K at medium-high settings, but if you plan to upgrade to a 4K 120Hz display in the next couple of years, you might soon need a higher-tier GPU to maintain those ultra-high frame rates. In that sense, the Aegis RS offers a solid today, but it isn't an eternity-lasting solution for the most demanding 4K gamers. If you're already owning a 4K monitor and expect to stay at that resolution, You may want to look at a pre-built with an RTX 4080 or even a future-proof RTX 4090 instead. The good news is the chassis is DIY friendly, so you could theoretically swap the GPU later if you're comfortable opening the case. Who should buy this machine? If you're a serious gamer who wants a read-to-torrent system that can handle modern AAA titles at high settings, does a little streaming, and values a quiet environment, the Aegis RS